Like unmarked graves, the portraits from the Holtermann collection have laid dormant in the vaults of the State Library of New South Wales in Sydney for over 7 decades. They now rest in their cryogenic black and white state, seemingly without a past or a future. Their fixed gazes stare back at us as frozen subjects from history. But who were they? By researching each individual, and as more and more details are discovered, they will slowly regain the colour they once had, but more importantly, their personality that has eluded them for over 150 years. Come with us back in time as we attempt to bring these forgotten strangers back to life. To combat the 8-second exposure time, the woman featured in this portrait strikes a disciplined stance for the camera, which is something that will remain steadfast throughout her eventful life. But despite her orderly appearance, Miss A, 282-3183, had a soft, nurturing nature that will be admired by many until the end. But who was she? It's well understood that until recent history, a woman's place was in the home. But in the latter decades of the 19th century, they were beginning to create some noise about their place in society. But having said that, the hill end goldfields and the rugged, inhospitable landscape that surrounded it was certainly a harsh environment, even for the strongest of women. And few managed to forge a career or even at most, an independent living. So let's step back in time to see if Miss A, 282-3183, was an exception. And by deciphering the reverse side of the negative as usual, we make our first breakthrough by identifying her as Miss Grote. And by doing so, the now familiar red curtain is beginning to materialise, and along with it, a subtle hint of her elegant dress. But let's delve deeper into Miss Grote's past to develop more of her evolving textures that has long since abandoned her. Further research reveals that Miss Grote was born in London on the 24th of September 1849 to Scottish parents Malcolm and Isabella Grote. She was christened a month later in the National Scotch Church, St Pancras in London. She was christened Margaret Anne Grote. The 1851 census states that Margaret's father Malcolm was a museum attendant in London, however it's unclear as to which one. In 1854, at the age of 5, Margaret and her family came to Australia, where her father was employed in the public school system in the New South Wales town of Orange. As her stylish and well-crafted dress begins to find its unique colours and design, Margaret might have found one of the few professions available to women at the time, as a dressmaker and milliner. However, it is later revealed that her admiration for her father was her true inspiration. It appears that Margaret was an exceptional student, because by 1864, at the age of just 15, Margaret, or Annie as she would mostly be referred to, became a teacher's assistant at an exclusive school for ladies in her hometown of Orange. By 1867, Annie, at the age of 18, completed a 12-week training course at the public training school at Fort Street in Sydney. From there, in 1870, when she was 21 years old, Annie was appointed as an assistant teacher at a school in East Maitland, near Newcastle. She was also considered for a full-time standalone teaching position at a school that appears to be named Stroughton Park Public. It's unclear where this school was located, but by searching historical records, The name is frequently associated with the Clarence and Grafton regions of New South Wales. This position would have earned Annie a salary of £72. However, it also appears that this application was declined. But all was not lost for Annie. Because the booming goldfields of Hill End, in the central west of New South Wales, was crying out for a new public school to accommodate an ever-increasing population of children. And so, the call went out for teachers, and Annie jumped at the opportunity. The appointed principal for the new school was Mr. Alfred William Page, seen here with his students at his private school. However, before his employment at Hill End, he had previously been a private tutor in Grafton. So it is possible that Annie and Mr. Page may have previously worked together and even assisted her in being the first female teacher at the new Hill End Public School on the 30th of May, 1870. With this life-changing event, Annie begins to burst into life, and as the new school evolves over the years, it appears in many photographs, and with it, Annie is also captured, bringing her into focus even further. In this colorised photograph of the school in 1872, done by Chris, Annie can be seen with the infants department. It also features the new master of the school, who will be someone that will change the sliding doors of life for Annie. Annie's mentor and friend, Mr. Page, resigned the following year in 1871 and was replaced by Mr. Thomas Yates. It's unclear if a relationship between Annie and Thomas existed prior to Thomas's appointment, or it developed during their employment. Whatever the case might have been, Miss Grote married Mr. Yates at Hill End in 1873, and as a result, Miss Grote became Mrs. Yates. On the 17th of March 1874, Annie, at the age of 25, gave birth to the first of their 8 known children. Richard Yates was born in Hill End, and by July that same year, 1874, Annie's husband Thomas was appointed as the teacher at Hargraves, 36 kilometres to the north of Hill End. And on the 18th of July, Annie was noted on her teaching record as dispersed with to assist her husband at Hargraves. Following on from Hargraves and the subsequent births of their next 7 children, Annie retired from teaching to care for their growing family. Her movements are documented by way of her husband's teaching appointments. In brief, and after leaving Hargraves, Annie followed her husband 250 kilometres north to Coonabarabran in 1875, then on to Maryvale near Wellington in 1879, then Blaney in 1882, before arriving at Esk Bank near Lithgow in 1883. Without going into too much detail, Annie's husband Thomas had a history of being reprimanded for wrongdoings whilst on duty, including being dismissed from Coonabarabran for being intoxicated in the classroom. And on the 16th of April 1887, while at Esk Bank, Thomas was, quote, severely reprimanded for gross neglect in regard to funds in connection with the savings bank of the school. He was fined £1 and informed that his conduct will lead to his dismissal. In about 1888, at the age of 39, and following Thomas's dismissal from Esk Bank, Annie follows her wayward husband to his new appointment at the inner Sydney suburb of Redfern. However, this does nothing to curb Thomas's behaviour, and he is continually being dismissed from numerous schools until his retirement in 1902. He died on the 28th of September 1907 in Newtown, leaving Annie a widow at the age of 58. After the death of Thomas in 1907, Annie then went to live with one of her daughters in Brookvale on Sydney's northern beaches. It was here in Brookvale where Annie's eventful life came to an end. In her memorandum that followed, Annie, or Margaret, was described as being able to recall many vivid stories of the early days in Sydney and also in the outback. Born in London, Miss Margaret, Anne Grote, who then became Mrs. Yates, but was warmly known by her middle name of Annie, passed away on the 1st of April 1941. She was 92 years old. Class dismissed, Miss Grote. You can now finally rest in peace.